welcome back to our corner of the internet, the Elijah Diaries. I hope life has been treating you so well, and no matter what you're going through, enjoy a couple minutes of escape with me, your Judy. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe. It helps me out so much. So, yeah, I appreciate you, and let's get right into it. This week for our Crow film analysis, I wanted to switch it up a little bit and kind of focus on one of my favorite documentaries, Paris is Burning. This beautiful documentary captures our community at a very specific time in history. Whether that time is magical or devastatingly harsh depends on what aspect of queer life you're viewing it from. But nonetheless, it is an amazing watch, and both the doc and its cut scenes are actually all on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it already, go ahead and check it out before or after the vid. Um, and now, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy today's deep dive. DJ, cue my music.
Make me your girl. If it's something that you need, then baby, come and share my world. If it's something that you want, come and take a walk with me. Everything that you need, I got it right here, baby.
Some documentaries preserve history, others preserve entire worlds. Released in 1990, Paris is Burning documents New York City's ballroom scene throughout various periods of the 1980s, following the lives of Black and Latino queer people who built community, status, family, and identity in a world that often denied them all four. At first glance, the film appears to be about queer identity, with a special light on transgender women, as they were termed drag queens at the time, but also fashion, voguing, and competition. However, Paris is Burning is truly a display of something much deeper: performance as power. And more specifically, what happens when people who have been denied social, economic, and cultural capital tactfully evolve not only to survive, but to forge their own sense of power. Throughout the doc, we meet legendary figures like Pepper LaBeija, Dorian Corey, Angie Extravaganza, Venus Extravaganza, and Willie Ninja. Each person is navigating a world that places them at multiple disadvantages: Black, queer, impoverished, femme, trans. Yet rather than disappear beneath those realities, ballroom culture created an entirely new system of value, a kingdom built from scraps. One of the most repeated ideas throughout the documentary is that a ball serves a purpose far beyond entertainment. Legendary mother of the House of LaBeija, Pepper LaBeija, famously describes it as being as close to fame, fortune, and stardom as our Black brothers and sisters could have ever gotten. A sports game is to straight people what a ball is to queer people. The excitement, the emotion, the rallying. The ball calls for a much more keen sense of preparation, embodiment, and barrier breaking than any other major event. The ballroom is not simply a party, it is a stage, an award show, a fashion week runway, an Olympic arena, a family reunion. And for many, a temporary escape from a world that constantly reminds them of what box they've been trapped inside, what narrative they've been pigeonholed to. Within the four walls of ballroom, queer people embody executives, military officers, supermodels, students, celebrities, stars, whatever they want to be. The categories are campy and playful, but beneath them lies the deeply serious desire for recognition, validation, and possibility. For one night, participants are not being judged by the standards or constraints of the outside world. They work hard for the chance at being celebrated by their own community, for a similar sense of reputability to that of white America. Perhaps no concept in the film is more fascinating than realness. To many non queer people, realness can seem contradictory, confusing, or even deceptive. Why would someone perform being an executive, a businessman, or a straight man? The answer lies in how we define authenticity itself. Even today, many people have strong opinions on down low queer people and passing versus non passing trans bodies because people love categorizing others. Ambiguity unsettles them. if they can't immediately identify who someone is, they begin questioning authenticity itself. But authenticity has very little to do with public access. A person does not simply become more real because they've chosen to disclose every part of themselves to the world. Paris is Burning subtly reveals that realness is not a parody or make believe, it is aspiration. Executive realness is not simply about pretending to be a white executive. It is about demonstrating that if society had provided these same opportunities, education, and resources, that you could be one. That you have the drive, poise, and nerve to become anyone you want to be. Categories like these expose an uncomfortable truth. Many people are excluded from or given restrained access to positions of power long before talent ever enters the question. Race, class, gender, sexuality all become barriers. Realness becomes a way of reclaiming what society insists belongs to someone else. The same can be said for femme queen realness. Passing is not simply about appearance, it is about safety. Being able to walk through the world without violence, without harassment or discrimination, without being constantly targeted. Many of the women in the film describe their dreams in remarkably simple terms: love, marriage, success, financial stability, legacy, overall, just the freedom to exist. I know firsthand what it's like to grow up surrounded by people who not only look different from you, but also receive treatment very different from you. In my youth, as the sole black student in the room for majority of my elementary school classes and even middle school years, I learned to assimilate, to do my best to blend in, to talk like my peers, to become one of them, and in some ways I did. I accessed what we called the Gateway Program for advanced students in elementary and middle school. I was on the honor roll. In high school, I did AP level courses and even dual enrollment. Now, selective higher education institutions. But none of that was expected of me solely because of my skin color. And I'm so grateful for my past because it made me who I am today. But if only we didn't have to feel like we have to lose ourselves to become good enough. If only the icons in this documentary who inspire so many, including myself till this day, had the same resources we're more able to obtain today. The ballroom executes this aspect of my lived reality within the confines of the queer world, where in modern day, acceptance, tolerance, and opportunity for openly queer people are far more abundant than they once were. The documentary repeatedly reminds us that ballroom is not just about competition, it's about survival. Many queer people in life, and in the doc particularly, are rejected by their biological families for being queer, feminine, trans, or just showing any sort of difference. In response, they built new families: the House of Labeja, the House of Extravaganza, the House of Pendavis, and countless others. Each house operates as a support system, chosen family, soul tribes, a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place to belong, and most importantly, a place to become. Throughout the film, we learn how legendary house mothers Pepper LaBeija and Angie Extravaganza became mentors, protectors, and caregivers for their adopted queer children who often had nowhere else to go. One of the most nuanced quotes in the film is that these houses function almost like street gangs. Traditional gangs fight in the streets, houses fight on the ballroom floor. The goal is not violence. The goal is material victory, grand prizes, tens across the board, but also respect, legacy, and a name that speaks for itself. One of the most influential contributions of ballroom culture to popular culture is the concept of reading and shade. Now, for a little history lesson, the film explains that reading comes first. Reading is the art of identifying someone's flaw and exposing it with precision. Shade evolved from reading, okay? Instead of directly saying something pointedly cruel, the insult becomes implied. The target understands it. Everyone in the audience understands it. Nobody has to say it outright, but it stings just the same, sometimes worse. While these moments are often hilarious, they also reveal something deeper. Reading developed as a defense mechanism, a way to strike before being struck, particularly in response to our straight counterparts who often would use slurs or weaponize our queerness against us. Being able to deliver a witty insult and get under their skin the same way they aim to hurt us became a survival skill. One that I, like many queer people, learned very early on in order to protect our dignity and strength. Elementary school me was a very Regina George, and I didn't know it then, but my fascination with her character was more than admiration. It was resonance with her position on a fence. As someone who grew up without examples of queer people around me, I, like the essence of femme ballroom, admired women in whom I saw that strength and defensiveness. The ballroom elevated that skill into an art form. What outsiders often interpret as cruelty is frequently a response to existing in a world that positions us to expect belittlement our entire lives. It's powerful in a way non queer people may not understand to be able to mirror that feeling onto your oppressors. Voguing emerges in the documentary as another form of transformation. Part dance, part battle, part performance, part protest. Rather than fight physically, competitors challenge one another through movement, through poses inspired by fashion magazines, gymnastics, and Egyptian iconography. The dance transforms aspiration into embodiment. For a moment, participants become the supermodels, celebrities, and icons they admire. Willie Ninja understood this perhaps better than anyone. The documentary captures Willie's dreams of taking voguing beyond the ballroom, of becoming a performer, choreographer, dancer, and artist on a global scale. A dream that for Willie eventually came true. Willie Ninja's story is one of the most powerful examples of the documentary's central idea. The ballroom was never simply fantasy, it was preparation. Many participants were practicing for futures the outside world could not yet imagine. Willie Ninja, among other queer icons like Tracy Africa, who was one of the first black trans women to grace major magazine covers, opened doors for artists like myself to not only dream of entering these spaces, but to dominate the very fields we were once so denied access to. I knew I'd heard these stories before because the influence of these figures is written all over the FX series Pose. Pose was my first introduction to ballroom culture as a young teen, and I instantly fell in love with its world, emotion, and its reflection of queer life and ostracization, even decades removed from the era it depicts. Willie's story is clearly reflected in the character Damon, the gifted dancer whose ballroom talent eventually carries him into teaching, choreography, and professional performance. Likewise, Tracy Africa's legacy can be felt in Angel Evangelista, whose beauty and talent allowed her to break into the modeling industry, only to be confronted by the same prejudices that had always existed beneath the surface once a staff member outed her. Despite its joy, Paris's burning never allows us to forget the realities surrounding ballroom culture. Poverty, homelessness, violence, hustle, and for some, that hustle meant sex work at a time when demonization of queer people across the board was at its height. The revelation of Venus Extravaganza's murder becomes one of the documentary's most devastating moments. Venus dreamed of luxury, romance, safety, and acceptance, dreams that should have been completely ordinary. Yet, for many trans women at the time and even now, basic survival can be uncertain. The documentary forces viewers to confront the gap between the world participants imagined and the world they actually inhabited. That tension exists throughout the film. The ballroom creates possibility while reality constantly threatens it. Like any of us, they dreamed, but their reality forced a kind of survival that I am so blessed to have never known. And how powerful to dream in a world that gives you every reason to be a cynic. Paris's Burning is often remembered for voguing, fashion, and unforgettable personalities. But I think its greatest achievement is beautifully documenting a community creating value where none was provided. When society denied them status, they created legends. When society denied them family, they created houses. When they were denied opportunity, they created stages. When they were denied visibility, they made themselves impossible to ignore. The ballroom was never just a performance, it was an act of world building, a declaration that even if power, wealth, beauty, and recognition were inaccessible in the outside world, they could still be imagined, embodied, and celebrated within those four walls. And sometimes imagination is where change begins. All right, Mimis, I hope you enjoyed today's analysis. Before I let you go, I think it's important to leave off with an awareness that much of our lives, no matter who you are, gay, straight, white, black, cis, trans, or any of the in between, is about performance and presenting whatever mask a certain space calls for. Be that your family mask, your friend mask, your dating mask, your professional mask. We all have different facets of ourselves that different spaces allow us to highlight and tap into at different levels. But beneath all of that performance, it's so important that you have a strong sense of self, an unshakable and intentionally curated self definition that keeps the core of your identity present no matter what room you step into. Of course, there's a time and place for everything, but in a world that already asks so much of us, you have to know exactly what you ask of yourself before all else. I love you, Mimis. Make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, leave your thoughts and recommendations and stories in the comments below, if you please. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, Mimis.